One suggestion that I myself have, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is that risk assessment instruments, when they classify a person as high risk, should clearly communicate to the decision maker what the statistical risk is of that person having what outcome. So a pretrial risk assessment instrument, it varies by instrument, as Richard was saying, but it might be the case that someone who's classified as high risk, that means on the basis of the validation studies for that instrument, there is a 13% chance that that person will be rearrested in a 4-month span. That is the information I think decision makers should have that would at least allow a rational conversation.
Just quickly, so I think, for instance, in New Jersey, I think that information is going to be provided to judges. So you actually know not only is this person, what their score is and kind of where on the grid they fall, but what is their chance according to the, generalizing from the population that they will reoffend, which is why also, just to make the point, I do think, and this maybe doesn't get entirely to your question, but you have to have a system in place where this information is contextualized by kind of human facts as well as data. And so if you had a defense lawyer who's well trained in these things, you just said 15% chance, right, of reoffending. The lawyer may reframe that, right? As there's like my client, there's an 85% chance or a 92% chance, right, that he is going to be back in court and not reoffend, and then describe why. And so I think you're going to have the data, but we have to humanize it in part. And I think judges are also going to have not only the scores, but in theory they need to be given here, and there are risks to this, but here are the kind of appropriate, with release being the presumption, here are the appropriate conditions that we would assign. And in Kentucky, for instance, where I don't think they were doing that, where they went through a lot of pretrial justice reform, there were some judges who were following the risk assessment tool and incorporating, and some who were just flatly rejecting it and sticking to old practices. So I think judicial education with the presumption of release and robust defense counsel advocacy would help to avoid some of these pitfalls.
Richard or Sonia, did you have something to add to that? Or should we take another question?
I guess I would just say, so briefly on Sandy's suggestion, that if you were going to do that, I think it would be important also to develop risk assessment instruments, which many of the existing ones don't do, that differentiate by what the person is going to do, right? Because the truth is that, many of the existing instruments don't do that. It's just, do you get rearrested for anything? As a result, for instance, drug offenders tend to have higher risk scores than violent offenders, and that's because drug offenders are much more likely to get rearrested, but who cares? They're getting rearrested for drug possession. It's not a big deal. And so that's just another problem. I think that Stefanos' question, though, is sort of a broader, how do we get people to value things differently in the criminal justice system? I guess the only answer, I don't really know that risk assessment technology provides an answer or particularly worsens, or it might worsen it. I don't know. I think the answer is it's politics, right? It's getting people to, it's social movements. It's getting people to recognize that there are harms to over-incarceration. And I think that's something that actually, not only the fiscal conservative movement in recent years that has focused on the cost of incarceration, but also the Black Lives Matter movement, the libertarian, the rise of a libertarian movement on the right. There are actually veins of political change on this issue that are happening, such that when Bill Stuntz wrote 20 years ago that we have this politics of ever ratcheting up harshness in the criminal justice system, this will never change, the political incentives are all aligned in one direction. I think that's changing now, finally, maybe because the system has hit a breaking point. And so I'm a little more hopeful. I actually don't think everyone in the criminal justice system is evil or that there's no hope for change.